Dr. Anthony Fauci tells the US Congress Trump never told him to stop testing, in spite of what the president told a rally at the weekend. Dr. Fauci says he's hopeful for a vaccine by early 2021. Renewed lockdown measures in Germany, a stark reminder the pandemic is far from over. This as France and the United Kingdom relax restrictions more and more. Double fault. Novak Djokovic testing positive for COVID-19 after an event he organised in the face of the threat of coronavirus infection. Thank you for joining us. Mexico has come to terms with an earthquake that measured 7.4 on the Richter scale. So far, 4 deaths have been confirmed. There is, though, widespread damage near the coastal epicenter of the quake at Oaxaca. The quake set off a tsunami that hit nearby Pacific coastal islands. These images, though, coming from Mexico City, where lots of damage was felt, lots of shock was felt and lots of damage caused. These are patients from a hospital that was damaged. They've been evacuated, many of them with COVID-19. A very difficult situation for people there in Mexico, and we'll bring you more on this as we get it. We can confirm 4 people have been killed in this, but as you see, extensive damage, many people affected. The top infectious diseases expert in the United States has testified before the House Energy and Commerce Committee. Dr. Anthony Fauci told the congressional inquiry he has not been told to slow down testing for COVID-19. It contradicts what President Trump said at the weekend. Dr. Fauci told the committee the intention is to test more and more, and each state should assess their own situation and act accordingly.
More testing for COVID-19, not less. That is the direction the top infectious diseases expert in the United States says the country is going as lockdowns are relaxed. The statement from Dr. Anthony Fauci flying in the face of one made by the president over the weekend when Donald Trump said he told the coronavirus task force to scale down on testing.
I, as a member of the task force, and my colleagues on the task force, to my knowledge, I know for sure, but to my knowledge, none of us have ever been told to slow down on testing. That just is a fact. In fact, we will be doing more testing.
Dr. Anthony Fauci also touched on the racial tensions and the protests taking place in the United States, saying there's a reason African Americans and minorities have been disproportionately affected by COVID-19.
The jobs that the majority of them would find themselves in does not allow them to protect themselves by looking into a computer and doing telework. Most of them are essential on outside, having to mingle in a society in which the virus is circulating. So right at the get-go, they have a greater risk of getting infected.
Over 122,000 people have died from the coronavirus in the United States. Health officials say a disturbing surge in infections have emerged in pockets of the country, including in Florida, Texas, and Arizona. They say the only way to keep the situation under control over the next few weeks is through testing, tracing, and isolating.
Meanwhile, Twitter has masked another tweet by Donald Trump. The social media company has labelled it as abusive, referring to a protest encampment in Seattle. Donald Trump wrote, "There will never be an autonomous zone in Washington, D.C. as long as I'm your president. If they try, they'll be met with serious force." Well, Trump has previously had tweets flagged for being misleading and for glorifying violence. We are awaiting the reaction from Trump to that one. The US tech sector is likely to be hit hard by President Trump's decision to extend a freeze on most immigrant visas. Critics say the move could undermine American innovation and leadership. Trump this week said he would extend the ban through to the end of the year and broaden it to include H-1B visas for highly skilled workers, as well as L visas, which are used by companies to transfer their own employees. With more on this, here at France 24, Sanam Chantier.
Silicon Valley is pushing back against Donald Trump's latest immigration restrictions. This time, the US president is targeting visa programs popular with the tech industry, which brings into the country thousands of skilled foreign workers, and it takes effect on Wednesday until the end of the year. The measure has been strongly opposed by business groups, among them Google, which has been a leading beneficiary of the H-1B visa system. The tech giant's CEO took to Twitter earlier on Tuesday to slam the move, saying we'll continue to stand with immigrants and work to expand opportunity for all. Businesses say the visa suspension would stifle economic recovery. The White House, for its part, claims the aim of the move is to open up 525,000 jobs for US workers and help the coronavirus-battered economy. However, there has been no explanation as to how the administration arrived at that figure. Critics say Trump has used the pandemic to achieve his long-standing goal to limit immigration. Some have even called the move a victory for immigration hardliners, as Trump seeks to further solidify their support ahead of the November election.
Rayshard Brooks has been laid to rest at a funeral service in Atlanta. 27-year-old Mr. Brooks was shot and killed by police after they were called to investigate a man who'd fallen asleep in his car in a fast food drive-in queue on June the 12th. Garrett Rolfe has been sacked from the police force and charged with felony murder after shooting Mr. Brooks as he ran away. French investigators have questioned 4 police officers over an arrest in January of a Paris delivery driver who died after they allegedly pinned him to the ground as he repeatedly shouted, "I'm suffocating." Cédric Chouviat's plea echoes that of George Floyd. His last words, of course, "I can't breathe." And the investigation into Chouviat's death comes amid protests across the world against police brutality and mistreatment of black people. Here at France 24, Emerald Maxwell with this.
I can't breathe. The last words of George Floyd, but also of Cédric Chouviat, a Paris delivery driver who died after a traffic stop in January. In video footage collected by investigators and seen by French media, the 42-year-old father of 5 can be heard saying he can't breathe 7 times in 22 seconds as 4 police officers pin him to the ground. The videos were taken by passers-by, as well as Chouviat himself and one of the 4 officers. The officers said they stopped Chouviat for looking at his phone while driving his scooter and for having a dirty license plate. Chouviat suffered a heart attack during the arrest and was taken to hospital where he died 2 days later from asphyxia with a fractured larynx, according to the autopsy. Investigators have questioned the 4 officers and will now decide whether they should be charged with involuntary homicide. Chouviat's family has accused the police of using dangerous and unjustified restraint techniques. Eyewitnesses say officers held Chouviat in a chokehold.
Monsieur Macron, il faut arrêter la clé d'étranglement parce que vous êtes un meurtrier si vous continuez à la laisser vivre. Si vous, en tant que chef de l'État, vous continuez à dire que le plaquage ventral et la clé, c'est un besoin pour un contrôle d'identité, pour un permis de conduire, pour une plaque d'identité, une plaque d'immatriculation. Si ça vous le permettez, vous êtes dans le club des assassins aussi.
The French government announced they would ban the controversial restraint method this month after recent demonstrations against police brutality. But following a backlash by police unions, it backtracked on the pledge a few days later.
And we're watching for all developments on that story for you. In Europe, there's a warning that the COVID-19 pandemic is far from over. Germany, one of the least affected countries, has reimposed lockdown in a region where around 1,500 people became infected at a slaughterhouse. On the other hand, France is easing restrictions. Schools, cinemas and some museums are open. And the United Kingdom, which has the highest death toll in Europe, says that its pubs, hairdressers and cinemas are to reopen on July the 4th. All this, of course, with a word of caution from the authorities.
After 3 months of closures and being told to stay at home, people in England can now look forward to a relaxing of coronavirus lockdown rules from July 4th.
Most leisure facilities and tourist attractions will reopen if they can do so safely. But we will also reopen restaurants and pubs.
Hallelujah! The social distance requirement will be reduced from 2 metres to 1. Places of worship will be able to hold services again, and 2 households allowed to meet up indoors for the first time since March. But Prime Minister Boris Johnson warned people not to let their guard down, adding that restrictions would be reimposed if necessary. Britain has Europe's highest death toll from the virus, and the easing of rules only applies to England, not the rest of the UK. But some scientists are worried it's happening too fast, with the country still confirming 1,000 or more new COVID-19 cases a day. The World Health Organization also warned that infections are still rising worldwide. This includes Portugal, where Prime Minister António Costa has announced the return of some lockdown measures in Lisbon amid a spike in new cases. Germany has also imposed 2 new localised lockdowns on western counties that have seen a cluster of cases linked to a slaughterhouse.
Der Zweck ist, die Situation zu beruhigen, die Testungen jetzt auszuweiten, festzustellen, ob auch über die Mitarbeiter von Tönnies hinaus in der Bevölkerung der Virus bereits verbreitet ist oder nicht.
It's the biggest outbreak in Germany since it began lifting the lockdown in early May. Several outbreaks at slaughterhouses in Germany and France have put a spotlight on the working and housing conditions facing the workers, many of whom are migrants from Eastern Europe.
Let's remind you of the death toll here in France from COVID-19. It now stands at 29,720. That total rising by 57 this Tuesday, with the weekly data from care and nursing homes. Deaths in hospitals increased by 26 to 19,232 compared to 23 on Monday, at an average of 20 over the past 7 days. There are now a confirmed number of cases active here in France. 161,267 people infected with COVID-19. And of course, many hundreds of thousands of healthcare workers across the country doing their best to keep everybody safe and try to give them the best possible treatment. We applaud them. The world number 1 tennis star Novak Djokovic has tested positive for coronavirus, bringing a premature end to the exhibition tournament he hosted during the pandemic and raising serious concerns about the sport's planned return in August. Djokovic, who wasn't showing symptoms, joined fellow players Grigor Dimitrov, Borna Coric and Viktor Troicki in testing positive for COVID-19 during the second leg of his Adria Tour. The social distancing appeared to be minimal. Players were filmed dancing back top in a nightclub and embracing each other over the net. In a statement, a deeply sorry Djokovic admits organisers were wrong to host the tennis exhibition. Simon Harding has more on this.
What makes it even more embarrassing for Novak Djokovic is, of course, he's a role model just by the fact that he's world number 1, but he's also a role model because he's the president of the ATP's Players Council. So he's meant to set the example. And as you mentioned in your introduction, the fact that he was filmed shirtless in a nightclub doing the limbo, hugging Grigor Dimitrov and others, the fact that he played a basketball game during his Adria Tour means that he's been very heavily criticized for doing this. Of course, in a statement which he released after he tested positive on his return to Belgrade in Serbia, he said he was very sorry. The tournament was meant to promote up-and-coming players and give match fitness to established players. He said that he didn't want to cause any lasting harm to people, but it does raise serious questions as to how tennis is going to be able to proceed, especially with the US Open coming without any fans at the end of August, Roland Garros coming in September with fans. So where does the sport go from there? Because many people, including players like Andy Murray, have asked, we need to learn our lessons from this. And Djokovic himself appears pretty silly after what happened.
Simon Harding on Novak Djokovic contracting COVID-19 during, it appears, an exhibition tennis tournament. After a mild winter and a warmer than normal spring, this summer is shaping up to be another scorcher in several parts of Europe. Meteorologists are already noting new record temperatures, while in Russia's Arctic, people are swimming on the Siberian coast. Here, France 24, Catherine Viette with more on this.
Nothing unusual about sunbathers going for a swim unless it's in Siberia. The coldest inhabited region in the world is in the midst of a heat wave, with temperatures hitting a record high 38 degrees Celsius on Saturday in Verkhoyansk.
Donc là, on est vraiment sous l'influence ici des hautes pressions qui empêchent l'air un peu plus frais de s'écouler, si bien que les températures sont mises à flamber.
Not to be outdone, Moscow too is experiencing hotter than normal weather. Many residents have taken to cooling off outside in public parks, despite the ongoing threat from the coronavirus.
Мне, честно говоря, не страшно из-за жары выходить на улицу, потому что кажется, что люди соблюдают дистанцию и все заботятся друг о друге, чтобы не заболеть, чтобы подольше понаслаждаться природой, погодой. То есть никому не хочется летом сидеть дома из-за какой-нибудь ненужной болезни.
The high temperatures haven't spared Western Europe. In Seville, locals are trying to stay cool as the Spanish city deals with highs up to 47 degrees Celsius. The heat wave is just hitting France, as meteorologists announced temperatures heading towards 35 degrees Celsius. That's reminiscent of last summer, which saw an unprecedented heat wave, with France recording a record high of 46 degrees.
Yes, hot weather here in France. Summer definitely arriving very, very quickly indeed. We will keep you across all the news developments, of course. Stay with us here in France 24. Most of all, stay safe.